Welcome, friend. Follow me. We're going somewhere dark, somewhere dangerous. Most people would never dare enter the place we are going. There's no telling what horrors we'll find, what terrors we'll uncover. Don't say I didn't warn you. We might discover terrible monsters lurking there. Be careful, they could follow you out, or maybe they're already inside you. Are you afraid? Good. Now you are ready to enter the Warning Woods. Misty called me around 11:30 that night. She knows I'm typically asleep by 9, and I know she knows that, so I picked up as soon as I realized my ringtone wasn't a song playing in my dream. I couldn't convince her to call the police, so I told her to go to the closest motel and get a room. I promised to give her cash to cover it when I saw her the next day, implying I'd make the 4-hour trek to Davenport from Des Moines. I left with a full suitcase in my trunk. I had a feeling I'd be staying with Misty for more than the afternoon. She called me again around 10 a.m. to say she just woke up. She told me she slept better than she had since moving into the underpriced red brick craftsman-style house she leased after Lara kicked her out of their apartment. She thanked me for the much-needed rest. I asked her how quickly she thought she could move out of the house. I told her I couldn't afford too many nights at the motel. She told me she signed a 12-month lease and she'd already put down the first and last month's rent, a deposit she couldn't reclaim until the lease expired. Without the deposit, she couldn't possibly afford another place. She said the property manager told her the house sat empty for months before she moved in, which explained the price, so she doubted she could find a subletter. Her meager, a generous word, finances complicated her situation for sure. I reassured her we would get to the bottom of her issue and brought our conversation to a close. Her issue. I emphasized the possessive to drive a double-edged point into her subconscious. First, that my stepping in represented an offer to help, not take on her troubles myself. Second, she'd yet to convince me the problem lied with the house and not her mind, which had a history of causing issues. It wouldn't have been the first time she fell into paranoia. Lara helped her get clean, but after their split, it seemed obvious, almost expected, she could have fallen back into old habits. Lord knows she wouldn't have had to look far for a new supply in the part of town she lived in. She'd told me she heard sounds coming from her basement the first night at the house and brushed them off, knowing her predisposition toward paranoid thinking. But that morning, she claimed to have found the light at the bottom of the stairs turned on, even though, according to her, she never went down there. The light could only be turned on with a pull string hanging directly from the fixture. It had to be turned on and off downstairs. To her credit, Misty told me she tried to brush off the light. She went down and shut it off after having a quick peek around the basement. She said nothing looked out of place, that it only contained utilities like the furnace, water heater, and laundry machines. She claimed to have sensed something watching her, though, something that injected her with an ominous feeling until she went back upstairs. Many hours later, in the early hours of night, she heard what she described as cardboard boxes shuffling along the concrete floor in the basement. She stayed up all night, too afraid to leave her bed. As soon as dawn broke, she went to the stairs and found the light on once again. This time, she assured me she knew for certain she'd turned it off. I'm still not sure I entirely believe her. She said nothing happened during the next day. She occupied her time by filling out job applications online, and by 3 that afternoon, she felt tired enough to take a nap. She slept until just after 9:30 in the evening, when she awoke once more to sounds in the basement. She said the same shuffling sounds drew her out of sleep, but this time, a heavy footstep on the stairs jolted her out of bed. Due to a past experience with what I've tried to convince her were unprofessional police officers, Misty will never be one to dial 911 unless somebody's actively bleeding to death. She grabbed a grilling fork from her kitchen and rushed to the stairs. She'd only heard the one footstep, but she still feared whoever was down there made it all the way up without her hearing. Before rounding the corner, she yelled for anyone there to show themselves. The basement light glowed, revealing no one. I criticized what she did next. It's the one time during the call I gave any credence to the possibility anything more than paranoid delusions caused the noises she heard. I told her someone could have been setting a trap for her. By going into the basement, she could have fallen right into it. But that's what she did. She asked me how I expected her to know if someone was down there or not without seeing for herself. I failed to think up an answer except call the police, and I just explained why she wouldn't have considered that a viable option. She said she searched the whole house and found no one. Yet a couple of hours later, after somehow managing to fall asleep, she woke to movement in her bed. What she told me happened next created turbulence in my head. I worried her delusions had rooted deeper than I originally feared. Deeper than ever. She said she felt her blankets tighten around her. When she opened her eyes, something pulled her comforter over her face to blind her. The blankets cocooned her, squeezing so tight she could barely move her fingers. She fell off of the bed. Well, she said she was pulled, and felt herself helplessly dragged out of the bedroom by her feet. She said she managed to loosen the blankets. I imagined her wriggling like a worm to do so, and slipped one arm out in time to catch the bedroom doorway. She stopped moving, but the blankets continued. They slid down to her waist before her assailant realized she wasn't coming with them any longer and let go. When the blankets fell to the floor, Misty saw no one standing by her feet. The hallway looked empty. She could see a faint light around the corner, too dull to be the kitchen. It had to be the basement. And as she sat up, kicking the blankets away, it clicked off. That is when she frantically called me, which brings us back to where this story began, with me driving up to meet her on the porch under her home's triangular gable. Misty took me inside when I arrived. I asked for a tour of the main floor in order to get a read on her mental state before letting her lead me straight to the basement. Misty had a tendency to be opaque about everything except what she needed from me, or anyone else for that matter, which often made it difficult to gauge the circumstances surrounding her, the framework of her life. She showed me into the various rooms of her house while I tried to peek through the closed doors in her mind. How was she holding up after the breakup? Fine. A dim answer I tried to illuminate as I flipped the light switch in her living room. Had she spoken to Lara since she left? Not really. We moved on. I kept flipping switches as we went. Did she have anyone else in town she felt close to? No. No friends at all? Well, not really. Not really? No. We entered her bedroom. Her sheets lay twisted on the floor, her pillows scattered on the bed. These details matched her story. I asked about job leads. Had any employers reached out to her? No. She claimed nobody wanted her. I opened the bedroom curtain, letting natural light in to supplement the yellow bulb contained in an insect graveyard. I reminded her she'd only just begun looking. Maybe she would hear from someone soon. No one wants a junkie who didn't even finish high school. I asked if she put that on her resume, which evoked a laugh. The room felt a little brighter. I mistakenly asked, "Junkie?" And the room dimmed again. Okay, former junkie. I couldn't decide if I believed her. I thought about offering to buy her materials to study for the GED, but decided against it. Too soon to offer aid. She was looking for a savior, not a path toward independence. I could push her in the right direction, but I couldn't lift her out of the hole she dug for herself. She'd only fall back in once I let go. The tour naturally brought us to the top of the infamous staircase. I asked if she was ready to show me the basement, but she cowered back. I read fear in the blankness of her expression. But I reminded myself, even though she still looked like an elongated version of the carefree little girl who used to put ponytails in the longish front of my hair, my sister had become a masterful manipulator. Whether she was resorting to using her powers on me, one of the last people she trusted, if not the very last, remained to be seen. I went into the basement alone. It looked, for all my efforts and even my willingness to detect anything amiss, like an ordinary basement. While the concrete floor, cinder block walls, and exposed joists betrayed the house's age, the modern utilities made it seem incurably normal. I opened a small door next to the dryer and found a laundry chute, one of the features in old homes I can't understand why ever went extinct. An open crawl space next to the breaker box under the stairs caught my eye. Feeling the strangest version of hope I'd felt in my life, I walked toward it and peered inside. I hoped I'd find anything to validate my sister's story, any evidence of another person hiding away there, someone who might creep out at night in search of food or drink. The house had been empty for some time before she moved in. I had no reason to doubt that part of her story. I couldn't see every detail masked by the shadows behind the narrow opening, but I saw enough to convince me it was empty. I headed back upstairs to report my findings to my waiting sister. I took her out for lunch. We reconnected over childhood memories and recent films and music. For those couple of hours, I forgot about the reason I was there, and I think she did too. We couldn't avoid the topic forever, though. After the waiter dropped off my receipt to sign, Misty asked if I was planning on spending the night. I told her I could, if that's what she wanted. Appearing about to cry, she nodded. She reached into her purse, telling me she would cover the tip. I told her not to be silly. That evening, Misty tired early. I told her I wouldn't be offended if she caught up on more sleep. I could watch a show on my phone while I kept an eye on things. At some point late in the night, I drifted off. I only realized it when I woke with my phone lying on my chest asking, "Are you still watching?" I shut it off and turned over on the structureless cushions, trying to find a position where my hips didn't feel like they were about to drag me off the couch. Once I settled and stopped making noise, a different sound reached me. My jaw clamped tight. I sat up immediately. I heard a repetitive shuffling sound coming up from below, sounding just as my sister described. It sounded too large to be mice or rats, too deliberate to be... I can't even think of what else it could have been. It sounded undeniably like a person walking slowly across the cool concrete in the basement. I recalled the story Misty told me. If it were all true, I was supposed to find the light at the base of the stairs turned on. I considered waking Misty, but decided to let her sleep and instead experience whatever this was for myself. I'll admit, I'd allowed a certain element of heroism to affect this choice too. If danger lurked below, I didn't want to bring my sister near it. I snuck to the top of the stairs, seeing the lights glow before I even got there. The shuffling noises stopped when I turned the corner to look into the basement. This made me feel seen in a way that tempted me to run and hide. I hesitated at first, but eventually called down, demanding anyone in the basement show themselves to me. My nervous system informed me this was a dangerous idea, doubling down as nothing happened. That's when an idea occurred to me. A thought I prayed I would not be able to validate. Was Misty making those noises down there? You may wonder, as I immediately did, why my sister would play such a blithe trick on me. But consider this. How could I, her big brother, abandon her to a house haunted by some unknown other? Such a situation would give me no choice but to offer assistance, financial or otherwise, and exempt her from finding her own footing in the world for however long it took her to recover from the trauma of this intrusion. The still lingering fear that something other than Misty awaited me down there kept me from going to the basement directly, though. Instead, after a few minutes of listening, I went to her bedroom. I found her there, sitting, sweating on her bed, in fleece pajamas, a pallid expression of fear stretched across her already gaunt face. In an odd way, this brought me comfort. I asked, and she said the noises had awoken her, but she was too scared to come find me. I told her to stay put and returned to the basement stairs. I heard the shuffling sound again. I heard it while staring into the basement and after I'd just verified Misty's location. That sealed it for me. I knew someone must be down there. Maybe they'd not expected me to be there and were trying to hide, or maybe they were lying in wait. Either way, I knew I would have to go down and look for them eventually. I knew I should call the police, but Misty would blow a fuse. She didn't trust cops to protect her, not after they ruined things with Lara. After Misty had showed up at the hospital with a broken orbital bone and multiple bruises from falling down the stairs drunk and who knows what else, the police took Lara aside and grilled her about abuse. Lara, who never would have put a finger on Misty, could never forgive her for putting her in that position, helplessly defending herself against people who seemed to want her to be some kind of monster they could lock away. Perhaps you can understand why it took so much convincing to make me believe Misty now. My sister, the perpetual victim of her own crimes. After firmly stating my intention to enter the basement, giving plenty of warning, I made good on that promise. I was glad the stairs weren't open in the back to let someone grab my ankles through them, even though that meant I couldn't see anyone hiding behind the thin piece of wood that ran up the back of the stairs. The basement stayed quiet as I stepped off the stairs. I gave the washer and dryer each a gentle push to see if they were on a slant or something that could have caused one of them to shift on its own. They remained firm. Nothing in the basement seemed able to make the noises I heard. They sounded so distinctly human. There was really only one place a human being could hide down there: the crawlspace. I approached it like a zookeeper approaching a tranquilized tiger. I held up my phone, which I brought in case the police absolutely needed to be called, and turned on its flashlight. The light cast a wide circle around the crawlspace, reflecting off the cinder block and actually making it harder to see through the opening. I took a step closer, then everything outside my phone's glow went dark. I heard the shuffling sounds behind me and shone my light toward the stairs. I saw the pull string swinging under the light bulb. Since clearly no one could have gone in or out of the crawlspace while I was staring at it, I turned my attention back to the washer and dryer. The laundry chute door was open. I said my sister's name under my breath and sprinted toward the chute. The door was only partially open. It shielded the interior from my flashlight. I reached it, swung the door open completely. Upstairs, Misty started screaming. The way she screamed, my body absorbed her fright. She sounded scared for her life. I almost fell on the stairs, but still made my way to Misty's hallway in under 10 seconds. Her screams sliced through her closed bedroom door. I barreled into it, twisting the knob with my free hand. My phone tumbled out of the other one, caught between the opening door and the frame. It landed flashlight up, illuminating a figure rushing toward me from the closet. I pushed back before realizing it was only Misty. She wrapped her arms around me and sobbed. I asked what happened, and she said she saw something tall and dark in her room. I looked around and told her it was gone now. I told her about the laundry chute and suggested I bring the couch cushions into her room to sleep on the floor beside her bed. I didn't plan on actually sleeping anyway. Neither of us did, apparently. Misty stayed up, looking at her phone, periodically offering joyless smiles when she looked over and saw me also still awake. She only lasted until around 4 in the morning, when I think her phone died, and she just shut her eyes and drifted off. I doubted anything would happen in the daylight, so I left her alone to go make coffee and breakfast. I had to settle for decaf and semi-stale Cheerios without milk. My head ached, begging for caffeine or sleep. When Misty woke up at 9:15, looking awful but awake, I accepted her offer to let me sleep in her bed for a while to catch up. I didn't wake up until mid-afternoon. I couldn't find her. Figuring she went out for something, I laid down to attract more sleep, but a few minutes later, I heard Misty come home. I listened to her footsteps, deciding whether she was on her way to come wake me up. Instead, she went to the basement. Her footsteps on the stairs surprised me. I found it alarming she would go down there alone, considering what happened the night before. I got up to follow her. The basement looked and felt completely normal again. I spared a glance over at the laundry chute door and saw Misty, at least I'd hoped it'd been her, had closed it. Misty herself I found wearing headphones with her back turned to me behind the stairs. She had her arms deep in the crawl space. For what, I could not see. I said her name. She spun around wide-eyed and tore off her headphones with one dusty hand. She told me she thought I was still sleeping. I asked what she was doing. A babyish look of regret softened her features. When she didn't immediately answer, I nudged her away from the crawl space to have a look inside. Between the shadows our heads cast into the crawl space, an object made of sticks and twine rested on top of the gray dust about 3 feet deep. I asked Misty what it was and why she put it there. She claimed she'd just found it. I reached in to remove the twig and twine object and poked myself on one of the sticks. I pinched it more carefully and drew it out, seeing the sticks were actually rose stems. Thorns stuck out from every inch. The 3 longest stems were bound together, making a triangle. Within this shape, 2 more stems had been curved and bound into a circle, with 4 short stems forming a square inside it. A few dozen black hairs twisted together ran down the middle, weaving between the 3 shapes on their way down and binding them all together at the base. The hairs looked a lot like my sister's. Maybe if she'd had time to dust them up and make this thing look like it had been stuck in the crawl space for a long time, I wouldn't have recognized the hairs. But they were clean and fresh, and even still smelled faintly of her shampoo. Misty recognized the futility of denying her creation. She told me she'd built it to deepen the mystery and keep me there, to draw out my involvement as long as possible. She didn't go so far as admitting she wanted me to bail her out of her situation, but she didn't need to. To me, it was blatantly apparent she intended to convince me something evil haunted her house, and to help her abandon the situation, either through financial aid or by offering to let her come live with me. I assumed she chose to trick me rather than ask directly because she knew I would put pressure on her to remain independent. I think Misty craved dependency. She told me the symbol was just something she made out of a dead rosebush in the backyard. She found it online in an article about a supposedly malevolent entity called BETREUGOR, who is, ironically, supposed to trick unwary victims into its service through crafty means. I accidentally poked myself on a thorn again and dropped the symbol on the basement floor. I looked down to kick it away, and when I looked up again, Misty looked devastated by guilt. This look succeeded in its intended effect of stirring my compassion, but I knew she was still trying to manipulate me. I touched the back of her arm and led her upstairs to talk. Misty and I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing her lease and searching for apartments around Des Moines so she could at least be near me and maybe not feel so alone while also living independently. Breaking her lease would hurt her financially, but she needed to be near family, or she might end up hurting more than her bank account. We found a few options, and though I didn't say so out loud, I decided I would even be willing to cover her lost security deposit. I promised myself to end my financial assistance there. By the time we finished, we were both exhausted, having still not fully recovered from the previous night. When I transitioned our conversation from employment to what she'd done to me, Misty explained she had used the laundry chute to travel between the basement and her bedroom and cause all of the disturbances. She apologized again. I wish I could have asked if she wanted a drink. I could have used one. Instead, I prepared the couch and readied myself to sleep soundly before heading home in the morning. But the night had other plans. I woke once again to the sound of footsteps, but this time they were not coming from the basement. They came from down the hall by Misty's room. I opened my eyes for a quick look, but closed them shortly, guessing Misty was probably just using the bathroom. Her footsteps reached the living room, though, prompting me to open my eyes again. I saw her standing near the foot of the couch, her eyes staring directly into mine through the rose stem symbol I thought we had left in the basement. Before my eyes fully adjusted, I thought she was holding the symbol in front of herself. But once my vision crystallized, I realized the impossible truth. Her hands hung stiff at her sides. The symbol which framed her hung suspended by nothing, at least nothing I could see. I said her name, but Misty remained entranced. I drew my feet in, slowly turning in order to rise from the couch. She moved around it to stand in front of me. I told her to knock it off. I reminded her of the help I'd given her that day, of our plan to get her out of her situation. I told her if she didn't quit the lies and deception and whatever magic trick she was doing to make that symbol float in front of her, I would rescind all the help I'd offered as well as what I hadn't. This did not faze her in the slightest. I stood. I stepped right up to the symbol and tried looking into Misty's eyes. They were twitching, vibrating subtly but rapidly. I could also hear her breaths, shallow and quick. If this was a trick, I thought, my sister must be sick in more ways than one. I batted the symbol away, stabbing the back of my hand on two thorns when I struck it. I expected it to swing back on some thread I couldn't see, but it flew into the curtain and fell to the floor. Instantly, as if returned to sleep, Misty's eyes shut and she collapsed. I barely caught her before her head hit the floor. She stirred, but I couldn't bring her to full consciousness. I put her arm over my shoulder and half carried her out to my car. I had to look up directions to the hospital. Once there, I brought her to the emergency room and requested a psychological evaluation for her. A nurse brought me a wheelchair and helped me guide Misty into it. She went into a fit of growling and thrashing so severe 6 staff members had to hold her down while a 7th injected her with a tranquilizer. Once we got her into the exam room, they bound her hands and feet to the table. It saddened me to see, but also gave me some relief. I relayed everything to the doctor exactly as it happened, and he seemed concerned yet quite confident he could help her. He told me to go home and get some rest, that he would look for any physiological causes for her condition first. He'd call me if he found anything or if my sister needed me. I thanked him and left. I returned to Misty's house tired and somewhat broken. I'd gone up there to help her. Now she was strapped down to a hospital bed being poked and prodded. She'd probably require an involuntary hold. Did that mean I would be stuck there for however many days they kept her? I didn't think I could leave her alone if I wanted to, and I sort of did want to. I would have to call my office in the morning and let them know I'd be extending my time off. Before doing anything else, I set my mind to one singular task. I needed to destroy that thorny symbol, that totem of BETREUGOR, just in case. I didn't necessarily believe he actually existed, had actually possessed my sister, but I'd seen what I'd seen. For this reason, I went straight to the living room to retrieve the symbol and destroy it, just in case. I didn't see it lying on the floor where I remembered it landing. I couldn't find it behind or under the couch either. I went so far as to draw back the curtain to see if it somehow ended up outside in the aftermath. I ended up finding it somewhere neither I nor Misty possibly could have left it on our way out of the house. I found it tucked in the furthest corner of the crawl space. I wanted to leave it. all my doubts left me as this supernatural evidence introduced itself. I think, by crafting it, Misty invited something not just into her house, but maybe into herself. I found a broom upstairs and used its handle to retrieve the symbol. The crawlspace's depth still required me to crawl in up to my chest. In there, I swore I heard low, heavy breaths like those of a resting bear. They seemed to come from everywhere, as if the crawlspace was actually the mouth of the demonic spirit. I succeeded, though, in recovering the symbol, which I took outside to burn. I sensed an inherent risk in burning my sister's hair along with the demon's mark. She'd made herself a part of the totem. I didn't want to accidentally destroy some linked part of her. I separated her from it, pocketing her hair before tossing the symbol into a small fire I made with a rusty, cobwebbed charcoal grill in her backyard. Within the hour, the hospital called to tell me Misty was alert and asking for me. When I returned to her, her face looked gaunt, her skin pale, and her eyes heavily shadowed with exhaustion. But I recognized her as nothing less than the redefined person she was determined to become. I can't help but feel that BETREUGOR's influence pervaded the whole ordeal, starting before Misty summoned him with the symbol, if that's what happened. His influence might have started with my sister's inspiration to call me that first night and begin manipulating the unconditional love I have for her. How can love, the beacon we look towards when everything feels hopeless, be so easily turned against us? Love. It may be the antidote to everything except its own venom. Anyway, if you meet someone looking to rent a house in Davenport, send them my way. The house is fine, I promise. You made it out. Congratulations. If you enjoyed the story, please rate, like, review, or subscribe. For early, ad-free episodes and behind-the-scenes episodes I call Into the Woods, become a patron at patreon.com/thewarningwoods. You can also support the show by purchasing merch. The merch store and Patreon links are in this episode's description. To stay up to date, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Warning Woods. And when you feel ready, meet me here for another journey into The Warning Woods. Thank you for listening.